Have you ever listened to a piece of music and felt the drummer wasn't merely keeping time, but rather narrating a story, painting with sound, and fundamentally altering the very architecture of the song? If you have encountered the work of Bill Bruford, you have undoubtedly experienced this sensation, a profound realization that the percussive arts can transcend their foundational role and become a leading voice in musical discourse. But what truly elevates a drummer from the metronomic security of a timekeeper to the visionary realm of a musical architect? What specific alchemy of technique, intellect, and sheer artistic audacity is it about Bruford's playing that has cemented his legacy as one of the most innovative and revered percussionists in the history of modern music? The answer is as complex and multi-layered as one of his signature polyrhythmic excursions, for William Scott Bruford was never a simple drummer. He was, and remains, a restless intellectual, a theorist with sticks in his hands, a musician who approached his instrument not as a collection of wood and metal to be struck, but as a conduit for complex rhythmic ideologies, and, most radically, for melodic expression. To genuinely comprehend the depth of Bruford's contribution, we must first violently dismantle the common, pedestrian notion that drumming is primarily about visceral power and a predictable, danceable backbeat. While these qualities certainly have their place in the rock and roll pantheon, Bruford's life's work represents a compelling argument for a different path. His genius is a tripartite entity, resting on the pillars of a profoundly sophisticated harmonic and rhythmic understanding rooted in jazz, a pioneering and intelligent integration of electronic percussion, and an unwavering, almost pathological commitment to musical exploration that saw him abandon fame and fortune on multiple occasions in search of a more challenging artistic environment. He was not merely a passenger in the progressive rock vehicle, he was one of its principal engineers, a key draftsman of a genre that, at its best, demanded more from its musicians than the comfortable 3-minute constraints of popular music. With his seminal work in Yes and the various fearsome incarnations of King Crimson, Bruford was never just a component of the rhythm section. He was a co-creator of intricate, sprawling soundscapes that unfolded with the narrative complexity and intellectual rigor of a modernist novel. His playing was the punctuation, the syntax, and often the subtext of the musical statements being made. The key that unlocks the entire labyrinth of his style is found in his formative years, which were steeped not in the raw, emotive power of the blues, but in the cool, intellectual fire of modern jazz. Unlike the vast majority of his British rock contemporaries who drew a direct lineage from American blues and R&B, Bruford's sonic DNA was encoded with the language of Max Roach, Art Blakey, Joe Morello, and Philly Joe Jones. This jazz sensibility is the Rosetta Stone for his entire career. It manifests in the iconic, high-pitched crack of his snare drum, tuned for maximum articulation and clarity, rather than blunt force. It is evident in his painterly cymbal work, where the ride cymbal is not a monotonous timekeeper, but a shimmering, dynamic voice, capable of whispering subtleties one moment and roaring with metallic fury the next. Most importantly, it is present in his uncanny ability to imply the pulse, rather than hammering it into the listener's skull. He played with a lightness of touch and a dynamic finesse that often seemed diametrically opposed to the bombastic, symphonic nature of the music his bands were creating. Yet, it was precisely this contrast, this tension between his fluid, jazz-inflected phrasing and the rigid, complex structures of progressive rock that made his drumming so utterly compelling. He could swing, and that inherent sense of propulsive feel, even within the most mathematically precise and challenging compositions, gave the music a unique, breathing vitality that so many of his technically proficient but metronomically rigid peers lacked. One cannot overstate the importance of his tenure with Yes, particularly on the holy trinity of progressive rock albums, the Yes album, Fragile and Close to the Edge. These records are not just artifacts of a bygone era. They are towering monuments to musical ambition, and Bruford's drumming is the bedrock upon which these cathedrals of sound were built. His interplay with bassist Chris Squire was nothing short of telepathic. Together, they redefined the very concept of a rock rhythm section, transforming it from a mere support structure into a dual-headed lead instrument. Squire's aggressive trebly Rickenbacker bass lines were often bewilderingly complex and melodic, and Bruford, rather than simplifying his approach to anchor them, met that complexity head-on. He danced around Squire's lines, accenting, commenting, and counterpunching with a dizzying array of ghost notes, linear fills, and displaced snare patterns. Listen to the intricate staccato dance they perform during the instrumental breaks of Roundabout, or the explosive synergy that drives perpetual change. This was not a bassist and a drummer. This was a single, eight-limbed rhythmic entity. On a track like Heart of the Sunrise from Fragile, his playing is an absolute masterclass in narrative dynamics. He navigates the song's violent shifts in time signature and its dramatic cinematic changes in intensity with a preternatural deftness. He is not merely following the guitar and keyboards. He is actively engaging in a high-level musical conversation, anticipating their phrases, punctuating their statements, and driving the entire composition forward with a relentless, controlled ferocity. The making of Close to the Edge was, by his own admission, an agonizingly slow and painful process, akin to climbing a mountain, knowing there's a pot of gold at the top. Yet the result was an immaculate, sprawling masterpiece, and the nearly 19-minute title track is perhaps the definitive showcase of his architectural approach to drumming, his ability to build and release tension over such a vast expanse, to create a sense of inexorable forward momentum, even in the most ethereal and atmospheric passages, is a testament to his compositional mind. This very success, however, contained the seeds of his departure. For an artist of Bruford's restless intellect, the prospect of recreating these meticulously crafted pieces night after night on increasingly large arena stages was a form of creative death. So, in a move that baffled the music industry and enraged many fans, he left Yes at the absolute zenith of their commercial power in 1972 to join the dark, volatile, and profoundly experimental entity known as King Crimson. For Bruford, this was not a career misstep. It was an artistic imperative. It was a conscious decision to trade the comfort of the known for the terrifying, exhilarating uncertainty of the avant-garde. Under the austere and demanding leadership of guitarist Robert Fripp, Bruford was finally untethered, free to explore the most jagged, improvisational, and dangerous corners of his musical imagination. The band's 1973 album, Lark's Tongues in Aspic, is the explosive sound of this newfound freedom. The music is angular, dissonant, and brutally aggressive, a universe away from the pastoral symphonic landscapes of Yes. On Lark's Tongues, Bruford's drumming is a force of nature. For the first time, he was paired not with another melodic instrumentalist, but with the anarchic, free-form percussionist Jamie Muir, a wild card who played anything and everything, from standard drums to chains, saws, and found objects. This percussion duo created a rhythmic maelstrom that was at once primordially chaotic and precisely, mathematically controlled. The album's two-part title track is a tour de force of rhythmic invention. The interlocking patterns between Bruford's crisp, acoustic kit and Muir's cacophony of textures create a sense of perpetual dizzying motion, a feeling that the music is constantly on the verge of splintering apart, yet it never does. This knife-edge tension between structure and chaos became the defining characteristic of this era of King Crimson, and Bruford's drumming was the engine of that tension. His mastery of odd and complex time signatures, already evident in Yes, became a central pillar of his style. Where other drummers sound stilted or academic when playing in 7/8 or 13/8, Bruford made these unconventional meters feel visceral and organic. He didn't just count them, he felt them, he grooved with them. This ability reached its apex on subsequent albums like Starless and Bible Black and The Monolithic Red. On a track like Fracture, one of the most notoriously difficult pieces in the rock canon, his drumming is a Herculean feat of concentration and endurance, navigating a minefield of shifting meters and rhythmic traps with breathtaking precision. His rhythmic partnership with bassist and vocalist John Wetton during this period was legendary, forming arguably the most powerful and sophisticated rhythm section in rock history. A perfect fusion of intellectual complexity and raw, bone-shattering power. The dissolution of this King Crimson lineup in 1974 sent Bruford on a new trajectory. A brief but notable stint as the touring drummer for Genesis in 1976 saw him ably fill the considerable shoes of Phil Collins, though he infused the band's music with his own distinct jazz-inflected flair. He then went on to co-found the short-lived progressive rock supergroup UK, where his drumming was pushed to new heights by the virtuosic and harmonically bewildering guitar playing of Alan Holdsworth. The real breakthrough of this period, however, was the formation of his own eponymous band, BRUFORD. This was his first true opportunity to be the primary composer and band leader, allowing him to fully explore the fusion of jazz and rock on his own terms. Albums like Feels Good to Me and One of a Kind are masterworks of the genre, showcasing not only his drumming, but also his considerable compositional talents. It was during this time that he began to seriously experiment with electronic percussion, a technology that was then in its clumsy infancy, but which he immediately recognized as a tool of immense creative potential. The 1980s saw this electronic exploration come to the forefront when he rejoined a completely reimagined King Crimson. This new quartet, featuring Adrian Belew, Tony Levin, and Robert Fripp, embraced new technology, and BRUFORD's pioneering work with the Simmons SDS-V electronic drum kit became central to the band's sound. It is crucial to understand that BRUFORD did not use electronics as a mere novelty, or as a lazy replacement for acoustic drums, as so many of his contemporaries did. For him, the Simmons kit was a new instrument, a new voice with its own unique sonic properties. He saw it as a means of radically expanding the drummer's sonic and melodic palette. He could trigger pitched, melodic, and chordal samples from his hexagonal pads, effectively blurring the line between percussionist and keyboardist. This revolutionary approach is on full display across the 80s Crimson trilogy of Discipline, Beat, and Three of a Perfect Pair. His intricate interlocking electronic patterns, often described as a kind of rock gamelan, meshed perfectly with Tony Levin's Chapman stick and the dual guitar arabesques of Fripp and Belew. On a track like Indiscipline, BRUFORD's drumming is not an accompaniment to Adrian Belew's frantic spoken-word narrative. It is a direct, visceral translation of it, a percussive manifestation of the story's paranoia and aggression. After his final departure from King Crimson in the mid-90s, BRUFORD came full circle, returning to his first love, jazz, with the formation of his band, Earthworks. This project became the primary focus of his creative energy for the remainder of his performing career. Initially, Earthworks served as a laboratory for him to further explore the possibilities of melodic and electronic percussion within a jazz framework. He famously developed a chordal drum setup, where various electronic pads would trigger pitched chords, allowing him to provide harmonic accompaniment while simultaneously playing grooves. As the band evolved, it eventually transitioned into a purely acoustic quartet, a move that allowed BRUFORD to focus on the subtleties of acoustic drumming and composition. With Earthworks, he finally and fully realized his long-held concept of the melodic drummer. His solos were not displays of athletic prowess. They were carefully constructed compositions with clear melodic contours, thematic development, and narrative arcs. He used the varying timbres of his drums and cymbals to create melodies, phrasing his rhythms as a horn player might phrase a line. This was the logical culmination of his entire artistic journey, leading a small, agile jazz group, playing his own compositions, and continuing to push the boundaries of his instrument until his retirement from public performance in 2009. So, what, in the final analysis, makes Bill BRUFORD a titan of his instrument? It is his rare and potent synthesis of formidable technical virtuosity and profound, uncompromising musicality. He possessed a dazzling technique, but it was never an end in itself. It was always and only a tool in service of a greater musical idea. He never played a superfluous or self-indulgent note. Every ghost note on the snare, every syncopated hi-hat opening, every precisely tuned tom-tom fill had a distinct musical purpose. He was an architect of rhythm, a painter of sonic textures, a storyteller whose rich and complex language was percussion. Furthermore, BRUFORD's influence radiates far beyond his technical innovations. He was and is a musician of fierce, unapologetic intelligence and unwavering artistic integrity. He was a thinker who wrote and spoke with immense clarity about his craft. He was never content to rest on his laurels, to cash in on past glories, or to repeat himself. His entire career can be viewed as a relentless, often difficult, search for new sounds, new contexts, and new ways of expressing himself through his instrument. He was a true progressive, not in the stylistic sense of the genre he helped create, but in the philosophical sense of the word, one who believes in constant forward motion. This relentless pursuit of the new, this willingness to risk failure in the name of discovery, is what separates the merely good from the truly great, the journeymen from the visionaries. In an era of rock drumming that was too often characterized by mindless bombast and metronomic simplicity, Bill Bruford stood as a beacon of sophistication, subtlety, and intellectual curiosity. He brought the mind of a jazz musician and the soul of a composer to the world of rock, and in doing so, he irrevocably expanded the possibilities of what a drummer could be. He was not just keeping time, he was shaping it, bending it, and sculpting it into breathtaking new forms. For those who possess the ears to hear, his vast and varied body of work remains a source of endless fascination and deep inspiration. It is a powerful and enduring reminder that the drums in the hands of a true master can be as expressive, as eloquent, and as profound as any other instrument in the orchestra. To listen to Bill Bruford is to listen to the very pulse of musical innovation, a pulse that continues to resonate with and challenge musicians and listeners to this day. His legacy is not simply etched into the grooves of the records he made, but is imprinted upon the very consciousness of modern drumming, forever changing the questions we ask of rhythm and the role of the person who creates it.